Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd. Fa'a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Sadaqallahul azim. Assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This session is now Ayah number 84 of Surah Baqarah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإذ أخذنا ميثاقكم لا تسفكون دماءكم ولا تخرجون أنفسكم من دياركم ثم أقررتم وأنتم تشهدون. صدق الله العظيم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and recall or remember when we took your covenant, saying, do not shed each other's blood or evict one another from your homes. Then you acknowledged this while you were witnessing. So this is in following the previous ayah in the previous session. These two ayah are together, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the first ayah reminds the Bani Israeel about their relationships with one another and their worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to maintain both of these in a good way. And in this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which follows, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now also reminds them about the opposite, the negative effects, the things that would destroy their society, destroy their communities, and to prevent them from that. So the first ayah is an encouragement to do things, and the second one is an inhibition, a command away from the things that would be negative. So overall, obedience to both ayah would give a very wholesome community to the Bani Israel. So this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said. Now, he's also reminding them that you witnessed this, that you saw or knew that this was the agreement with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let's have a look at that in a little bit more detail, inshallah. So this ayah reminds the Bani Israel of the covenant they had taken with Allah ta'ala, further to the main covenant all mankind took. So I've mentioned this previously. The main covenant is the one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gathered the whole of mankind yet to come from Adam alayhi salam. And having gathered everybody, all the souls, we stood on a particular plane and in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was hidden from us. However, he spoke to us and he gained from all of us a covenant, an agreement that we will worship none but him, and that we will remember him and be grateful to him. And when we come back to him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, I will remind you of this because I'm going to send you to the dunya. And when you come back, I will remind you that you yourselves witnessed my existence, witnessed your existence and your creation from me, that you now are in a life. You have a life, you exist, you live. I will take this from you now and I will remind you of it. So when you go to the dunya, you should not forget. So this was the main covenant that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took with all mankind, regardless of who we are now in the dunya, no matter what religion or philosophy or belief we follow, whether we believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not, we have all in our souls taken this covenant, this agreement with us, and we should remember it. It is at the core of our existence. So what happens with the Bani Israel is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes a second, if you like, underlying covenant with them specifically. Why? Because these were the chosen people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the favored people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the favored people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not because they were Bani Israel, i.e. they were particular bloodline, so much as because they were the ones who had been given the Torah through Musa alayhi salam, and prior to that were the descendants of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And Ibrahim alayhi salam made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his children, for his progeny to be a race of chosen people, of favored people by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they remain on the path of righteousness. And that's the important point here, that they remain on the path of righteousness. And another ayah in the Quran discusses this, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responded to Ibrahim alayhi salam and responded by saying to him that those of your progeny that do good, they will be in my favor. But those who don't, there will be a different treatment for them. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clarifies that with Ibrahim alayhi salam. However, the general Bani Israel fall into the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding them about this second covenant that he had with them, where he gave them this extra specialness. And that maintains and remains itself to this day, not only with them, but whoever follows righteousness. And so, of course, the Bani Israel were overtaken by the Ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Muslims now have that favor with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, the agreement, this covenant with Bani Israel, remains for any and whoever of the Bani Israel to this day until the last day remain upon that agreement with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and of course eventually merge into the deen of Islam, because that is the logical conclusion to the coming of Musa alayhi salam, and then being succeeded by Isa alayhi salam, who then is finally succeeded by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All of them coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one single source. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also, as I say in this ayah, he expands that the second covenant referred to in the previous ayah and now mentioned mentions the prevention of injustices amongst themselves. So the first ayah, as I said, it mentions the bringing together of the community, and this second ayah, it expands that this ayah covenant, and it includes now the injustices that occur amongst the people of the Bani Israel, so such as shedding blood, evicting each other from their homes, and so on. So this kind of cruelty and injustice, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warns them about. Do not do those things, and you will remain maintained upon being the righteous people. So this was a warning to them, because these things were happening amongst them, and so this was a reminder to them to prevent that from happening and maintain them as a wholesome community. So this was for them, and at that time, those to whom this was conveyed and obeyed this, they found themselves in a better society, a better community, and they were blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those who did not, obviously, they incurred the ghadab of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And tragically, over time, the majority of them became like this, defiant and disobedient. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put them in the situation that they find themselves in the dunya today, which also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, that they are always in need of other people's help, other people's support, and the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is their state. Now I want to look at what it means for us, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإذ أخذنا ميثاقكم لا تسفكون دماءكم ولا تخرجون أنفسكم من دياركم ثم أقررتم وأنتم تشهدون صدق الله العظيم. And recall when we took your covenant, saying, do not shed each other's blood or evict one another from your homes. Then you acknowledge this while you were witnessing. So how did this apply to us? We don't have a secondary covenant that was given so clearly to us as was given through Musa alayhi salam to the Bani Israel. However, we could, in a manner, accept that that is also the case for us, because we have been given the Quran. And the Quran is a great covenant with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran allows us to understand in great detail what has happened, and it is something that's very important for us. So let's have a look at that. As I mentioned in the previous session, in the modern times, we are in the Dajjalic age, an age that defies the first ayah and also this second ayah. It defies them. It tries to break down communities, break down societies, break down the core of communities and societies, which is the family. And that is just something which is the core of everything that is happening in the Ummah. If you look at it, it is the core aims of the Dajjalic system. Now, the Dajjalic system has two benefits from this, at least. perhaps more. The first is the corruption and chaos in society. By breaking down family ties, I mean, this is what makes us human and humane. It's what keeps us together, because within those ties is love. And love is an essential, important element, aspect of human life and human existence. So the Dajjalic age is one which is trying to first break that down. And we break that down by breaking down the relationships. You do it in the various manners that they are doing in this day and age. And as a result of that, whether it's simple as mobile phones and everybody's on their phones, engaged with one themselves on the phone, engaged with a machine and not with one another, all sitting together, a family sitting together at a dinner table and everybody's on their phones, or whether it's on a greater scale of warfare. However it is being broken down. Hatred is being encouraged, and differences between people, racism and so on, are being promoted. And as a result of this, the Dajjalic age is having a great sway on the Ummah. And these ayah are being defied. The worship of Allah Ta'ala is being broken down or distorted or completely mutated or denied and defied, or the ties of relationship, of kin, of parents and brothers and sisters and so on is being broken down. And as a result of that, the chaos in society is one of the main achievements of the Dajjalic age, one of its main aims. The second aim, which is more sinister, is this idea of the singularity. And the idea of the singularity is that human beings ultimately cease to exist as human beings, become unrecognizable, because first and foremost, we break down the relationships, so people are uncaring about one another and become individual. Then the individual is confused further, that there is a confusion of gender. So the very nature of us, the very core of our existence in the sense of our sexuality, is also corrupted. So we are no longer sure of our sexuality. So our hearts are ruined in this manner, because first the love is destroyed, the ihsas, the humanity, the concern for one another and the ties of love. And then secondly, then within ourselves, the idea of at least having stability as a man, stability as a woman, and being attracted to a woman as a man or to a man as a woman, this is broken down as well. And then the next step is that we start to merge with something that's been all along there for us, technology. Technology has been there all along and has been increased and become more sophisticated. As I mentioned previously, the connection we seem to have with our phones and our laptops and computers, and now there's artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence is that next step where they are now making it possible to merge human with machine. And then you have your singularity. You take away love, because love is important and it has to be removed, because computers and machines do not love. They do not know the concept. And second, you take away gender, because then you form this being that has no real identity. Is it male? Is it female? The very basics is gone. Let alone, does it love? Does it care? So then you merge this with artificial intelligence and you come out with some kind of cyborg being that is neither human nor machine, but a merging of the two. And this is the ultimate aim of the Dajjalic age and the Dajjalic phenomena. And this ayah, both this first and the second ayah that we are dealing with in this session, try to prevent this. They are there to prevent this, subhanAllah. And it is up to us to realize this and understand that. So looking at the particulars of this second ayah, the shedding of blood and evicting from homes, that's happening now around the world, subhanAllah. And in the majority, it is a case of where others are evicting or shedding the blood of Muslims and evicting them from their homes, pushing them out of the lands that they live in, taking those lands over and becoming the new owners of that land. And that has happened many times. But having said that, it has happened through history, even amongst non-Muslims. The people, the indigenous people that lived on the land now known as America, The Cherokee, the Apache, the Cheyenne, the Mohawk, and so on, all were killed out, moved out of their homes, and destroyed as a community of people in the hundreds of thousands, in the millions. So that was one. Then there were the Aborigines of Australia, the Zulu of Africa, and so on, ruined and destroyed, blood shed, and removed and evicted from their homes. This has happened throughout human history. And this is what the results of that we can see today, with those entire nations completely extinct. Subhanallah. But not only has this happened on the international scale, but also amongst and within families. Amongst and within families, subhanAllah. And now we can just even isolate this to the Muslim community, that we have so much of this going on in the Muslim community, that families are torn apart. Families have differences. Families have difficulties with one another to maintain their relationships, subhanAllah. And people within families, family relatives, move apart from one another, are kicked out of their homes for simple things sometimes. Sometimes just the practicing of the deen gets them evicted from their homes, because perhaps they have started to practice Islam in a pure sense, and the family was cultural, and the cultural family does not accept the pure Islam and sees that as alien, and evicts the child, evicts the son, evicts the daughter from the home. And this is something that's happened a lot in the homes. Not only that, but even if we look at reverts are evicted from their homes when they become Muslim, because the rest of the family does not accept Islam, subhanAllah. So these are some of the things which this ayah teaches us about. Now I want to look at some of the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تقاطعوا ولا تدابروا ولا تباغضوا ولا تحاسدوا وكونوا عباد الله إخوانا ولا يحل لمسلم أن يحجر أخاه فوق ثلاث. صدق الرسول. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, do not cut off one another, nor desert one another, nor hate one another, nor envy one another. Be you instead, be you, O worshippers of Allah, brothers to one another. It is not lawful for the Muslim to shun his brother for more than 3 days, subhanAllah. So this is something, it's almost, you can feel the plea in this from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to each and every single one of us. Don't cut one another off. Don't desert each other. Don't hate each other. And don't envy one another. And look at the respectful way he refers to us. Be you, O worshippers of Allah. SubhanAllah, he's referring to us as worshippers of Allah. And we know, most of us, we know if we're true to ourselves, our worship of Allah is very, very lacking. But he gives us that. He gives us that title, that status. Be you, O worshippers of Allah. Be brothers, including sisters. Be sisters, be brothers and sisters, be sisters to brothers, be brothers to sisters amongst yourselves. And then the final point, it's not lawful, it's not halal, it's haram for the Muslim man or woman to shun his brother or sister for more than 3 days. Allah Ta'ala understands easy. Allah Ta'ala has given that. Rasulullah has given that. Yes, difficulties can happen, but you got time. I give you time. I give you 3 days. Yes, it's you can get hurt and you can walk away. Yes, it happens. It's okay. It's human nature. Yes, the heart can be in a tumultuous state. Yes, but calm down and go back and reflect and change and forgive and forget. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given that guidance to Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which we find in this hadith, subhanallah. And the hadith also teaches us to maintain good relations amongst the general Muslim community, because this is for all. The Muslim brother and sister is the one which is in the general community. All of us in the community, in the ummah globally, and in the community in our towns and cities. That relationship that we have, we must maintain. And this is even more important amongst the ties of the womb, the family, which includes parents, children, siblings, grandparents, uncles, and aunts. This is the family. These are all ties of blood. And that tie of blood is important from the womb. And so This is something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has emphasized time and time again. And this is one of the greatest objectives and achievements of the Dajjalic age that we find ourselves in today. And the heart of all these relations, the heart of all these relationships is the harmony of the husband-wife relationship, subhanAllah. Because it is these two individuals who come together on the relationship of the heart between them, from whom come the relationships of the womb, the children, and from whom come their children, and who are brothers and sisters, siblings amongst themselves, and who, by coming together in the state of nikah, both the man and woman bring their brothers and sisters, their fathers and mothers together, and they become the grandparents and the aunts and the uncles. And so this whole family unit is built upon and around the core, which is the husband-wife relationship. So they are first and foremost at the heart of this whole family gathering, and they need to maintain their relationship, not just because of each other, but because of all that is tied into them because of their being together. So when they're husband and wife having difficulties, they must consider not just each other, but they must consider what they're about to tear apart if they ever go that way. So I'd like to reflect upon this, inshallah. The maintaining of good relations will gain the pleasure of Allah Ta'ala, the main pursuit of spirituality. That is the main pursuit of spirituality. And to do so through the difficulties only increases the nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is what we should consider. This entire course is about the spiritual reflections upon the Quran, upon the teachings of the Quran, ayah by ayah. And whatever we can find, whatever we can gain from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hidayah, his guidance, as we work through the words, the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his book, we must gain that as if we're thirsty for water in the desert. So we should reflect every ayah and go back and reflect again on previous ayat, because every single one is that drop of water that is so necessary to the thirsty person in the desert. We are in the desert of the dunya. It is dry and more dry and empty of love, of harmony, of peace, of sakina, and most importantly, of that spiritual ta'alluq connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And every single ayah gives us a little bit of that water, and we should hold on to it, and we should go back and revisit. I often do that with many lectures and talks that I hear from my ustads and other people. I go back again and again and again, and each time something new comes out from the same talk, from the same lesson, from the same dars. And that's the thing here. We should maintain continuously our spirituality by continuous reflection, continuous reminder that we are maintaining ourselves with a drip feed to the heart, like the patient in a hospital has a drip feed of glucose to his body. We need to have that drip feed from the Quran to our hearts, to our souls. And by doing that, we can maintain ourselves and remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. By doing that and rising above the emotional and physical fitna of this dunya, we can maintain good relationships. We can forgive one another. We can be forbearing. We can look ahead and look at things with insight and foresight and hindsight, that we can think this is not going to help us. Our journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is spiritual. And through that spiritual pursuit, we gain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is gained more when there are difficulties and we maintain ourselves than when there are ease. Ease, it's okay. Anybody and everybody can do things in times of ease. But in times of difficulty is when we show our true endurance and stamina, and show our true character, and show our true efforts and sacrifice and commitment. And that is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is looking at, because through difficulties, the sincerity of a person is shown. Through difficulties, the reality of a person is shown. And so, when we have difficulties in families, when we have the hard times, when we have the differences, we should, as quickly as possible, Remove ourselves from that situation. Walk away physically if you need to. Ask the person, let's talk about this again later. Let's just calm down. Walk away and think within yourself, for yourself, what is this life about? What is my reality? I am a spirit, a soul, this body and its needs and the fitan of the nafs and the shaitan, etc. All these things and the Dajjalic world that we live in. Yes, these are all stacked against me, but my spirit, my spiritual connection to the Almighty, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, overrides all of this. It overrides all of this. It is greater than all of this, but only if I was to connect to it. And by doing that, because yes, families can cause us the greatest hurt. But by connecting ourselves spiritually, we go beyond the level of the mind and the clever arguments we want to put forward and the pride that we may have and the ego. And we go beyond the heart and the hurt and the bitterness and the hate that starts to become rooting in our hearts. We go beyond that and we rise to the level of the spirit, the ruh, which is not affected by these things. The ruh can override these things. The spiritual person is at peace because he or she understands that no matter what is happening to me, who is saying and what is being said, ultimately it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is something for my tarbiyah. It is something for my hidayah. And how I respond to it in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what is being measured here. And that's how we need to look at things. That if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if the heavens could open up, the skies could open up, and we could see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as we're having that argument with my wife, my husband, my son, my daughter, my father, my mother, my brother, my sister, as we're having that argument, and we now see Allah looking down upon us, what would be different? What would we change? And immediately we would change our stance, our aggression, our wanting to be right. Immediately we may fall into sajda in front of Allah Ta'ala and beg Him for forgiveness and admit that we are the ones who are in the wrong. We would do that. So if we have a spiritual connection, it keeps us in that state. So we do not need to engage our pride, our anger, our bitterness, our vengeance. We don't need to engage those things. We just need to remain in harmony with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and understand whatever it is that's happening, it is coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He is testing me how I will respond. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to understand and benefit from this reminder, inshallah. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu alayk.